One lifetime is not enough to accomplish what we are meant to do on planet Earth. How do I know this? I remember. In fact, before I was born into this life as Carol, I chose to be one of those people who would remember, not just the past before this one, but also many lives. Just as there is a reason for each life, there is a purpose for me to relive, review, and learn from those lives. Granted, it is a strange story, but I hope the way I have chosen to share my journey will make it easy for you to wrap your mind around the idea of reincarnation. Studies show that billions of people all over the world, not only Hindu and Buddhist, believe in reincarnation as a way of life. I did not give reincarnation a thought until the death of my father, who was a Chinese Buddhist. However, the universe guided me to Western research about reincarnation rather than Buddhist teachings. Ian Stevenson, MD, and Jim Tucker, MD, from the Department of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, and other reputable scholars had done extensive research that strongly suggests reincarnation is indeed true. Joe Fisher's book, The Case for Reincarnation, was my introduction into cultural beliefs around the world and an historical perspective about past life regression therapy. Christopher M. Bache's book, Life Cycles, Reincarnation and the Web of Life, gave me a deep dive and prepared me for my regression experiences with Brian Weiss, MD. Weiss's story about his client Catherine and the messages from the masters, and Michael Newton's research about the life between lives, shattered the glass ceiling and took past life regression therapy to another level. Helen Wambach, PhD, collected statistical evidence that supported a belief in reincarnation. Carol Bowman, MS, Roger Woolger, PhD, Dolores Cannon, and a menagerie of others have added years of research about the benefits of past life regression therapy. Collectively, they laid the groundwork for my unusual approach. But what makes my book different? As a past life regression therapist who is also a medium, I have experienced my regression clients' journey with them. And as a medium who is also a past life regression therapist, I have a deep understanding of a client who comes for a reading and his or her past life or lives want to tell their stories. When ghosts or spirits who are stuck and need help to resolve an issue that they did not complete in their incarnation communicate with me, I am at the ready. My experiences have shown me that many folks in the spirit world are awakening too and want someone to talk to. I believe the information I have gleaned from my experience is a unique and valuable addition to better understand the process of reincarnating and to demystify some of the beliefs around reincarnation. I will be the first to admit that it is an odd experience to be both the researcher and the subject of the research, to be the observer observing the observed. Knowing from quantum physics experiments that the researcher's intention can affect the experience, I asked my higher self, what intention could I hold for the best outcome of this experiment? The answer was loud and clear: seek truth. My book is unusual because I will share 8 past lives which run a gamut of experiences and show the connection to this life in subtle and profound ways. The memories of these past lives persistently unraveled over 30 years. It took patience and perseverance, skills I must have developed in other lives. The backstory of each past life holds the process of remembering and reconciling or balancing the past, but the story would not be complete without sharing my personal healing journey and my climb up the spiritual mountain and back down again into the valley to know and to be unconditional love. It is not only a journey, but also a process, and you will often hear me say, I am a work in progress, doing it with love. How did I become the observer? Although I was raised in the Christian church, I questioned everything after my father died and he began communicating with me and showing me images of what he was doing on the other side. I became curious about Dad's Buddhist beliefs, particularly what his next life would be, knowing some of his actions in this life that caused my mother to run away from him. When I was more comfortable talking with Dad's ghosts and validated what he told me, I became eager to know more about the ghosts who scared me as a child. I had learned to write down my questions before I meditated, so I did just that. I asked the universe, who were the ghosts I've seen all my life? Sometimes I must be patient for the answer to my questions to the universe, but not this time. Immediately, a menagerie of ghosts whom I understood were my past lives crowded my living room. We prefer to be called spirit beings, Josie, a sassy young woman, said, giving a little twist of her hips that made the beaded tassels on her dress jiggle. Fidgeting with her feather boa draped over her dress, Josie stared glassy-eyed as she puffed on a long cigarette holder, as if she was the most important person in the room. She had competition from an elderly man in his fine velvet robe. He was a religious figure, but one with an attitude. He stared down his nose at the young lady as if she were an underling. A gypsy woman stepped between the man and Josie as if to dare him to cross an imaginary line. She spat on the floor and wiggled her body until I thought her breast would fall out of her loosely tied bodice. A shy young girl clutched the gypsy woman's skirt as she peeked from behind and ducked back again. I was not surprised to see Asians from China, India, and Japan. I intuitively knew they were my connection to my strong attraction to the Asian cultures. An old man stood serenely with a staff in one hand and the other hand propped behind him, like the paintings I had seen of Lao Tzu and Chuang Tzu. A childlike lady looked downcast in dripping wet clothes. Her hand caressed a jade and gold hairpin that had held her hair in place. Wet hair clung to her face and neck. Next, I saw two men who looked remarkably similar, except for their garments. One in a long hooded robe and sandals, the other in beige breeches that stopped below the knee, stockings that bulged with his thick calves, and a loose-fitting shirt that revealed the hair on his chest and forearms. Colored paint smudged his hands and face. They bookended the central figure, an elegant woman who wore a silk robe. She stepped forward gracefully and extended her hands in a prayerful pose in front of her body. How I became the observed. Each of my past lives wanted to tell their stories. Anne Marie, the past life just before this one by chronological reckoning, was eager to tell her story, but Lily went first. It would be too much for her to know your story first, Anne Marie, Lily said gently. I sensed her tone was meant to soothe Anne-Marie, but it had a calming effect on me as well as the others. We will all have our turn. It's what we all agreed upon before Carol incarnated, Lily said to Anne-Marie and the others. We agreed? Before I incarnated? Are you kidding me? I said, feeling skeptical flushes nudged out by shudders that signal truth. Some people call them goosebumps, but for me, the goose flesh is just the beginning as a wave starts to cover my body until a shudder releases the pent-up energy. Lily placed her hand on my shoulder and the shuddering stilled. I had a feeling Thor's hammer was about to drop, but the others gathered closer, sat down, and Anne-Marie said, Tell her your story, Lily. She'll like that one because it takes place in China, and you know how much she loves China. And so it began. It was like Scheherazade and 1001 Arabian Nights, except that it took 30 years to listen to their tales. It was worse than channel surfing, but I knew it was happening for a reason, so I waited patiently, took notes, and organized files. Skills I learned in other lives. At the same time, I learned the past life regression therapy process, and it was common for my conversations with my past lives to resemble therapy sessions, but with a twist. The challenge of working on a multi-dimensional cosmic puzzle was beyond intriguing. Because the process was so tedious, my higher self guided me to write about each life as a short story, followed by the backstory to summarize the process from beginning to end. While it is important for me to experience my past lives the way I did, I believe it is not necessary for everyone to do so. I believe these stories may help give a clearer understanding about reincarnation, an understanding not steeped in superstition or boxed in by tradition. How I observed. As a medium who was also trained in past life regression therapy, I am in a unique position when I communicate with another person's soul, especially when the subject soul shows me his or her past life. As a medium, I developed a technique where I can discern whether information I am receiving is for the subject, for me, or for both of us. I created this method when I sensed what I call a wobble and knew it meant that the question posed was not clear. When I reframed the question, I often got a clear yes or no response. When I asked if the information was for the subject and the answer was yes, I felt as if I touched the person's skin. And when I asked if the information was for me and the answer was yes, I felt as if I touched my skin. This technique was particularly important when I began remembering James and felt my inner skeptic question the validity of those memories. Yet, every time I experienced James, it was as if I touched my own skin. After my experiences with Dad's ghost or spirit, the first past life I was cognizant of was Lily, an Indian woman who lived in the 1st century BCE. I practiced Tai Chi at the beach. I got to the part, play hands among the clouds, and I heard her say, Step into the water and feel the pull of the waves as your feet sink into the sand. As if on cue, a breeze pushed me in the opposite direction. I felt her arms around mine, her feet sinking with mine. Good, Lily said. You automatically adjusted your weight. Now feel the wave pull and the breeze push, as if you cradle a cloud in your arms. The movement came alive. This form of moving meditation calmed my restless monkey mind and yet stimulated my creativity and energy. Then ordinary experiences triggered more memories about Lily. the feeling when I touched gauzy silk fabric, smelled patchouli, or heard a peacock's cry. The memories triggered were spontaneous memories that popped into my awareness unbidden. For me, spontaneous memories come in two ways. The first is with a clear knowing, which may or may not appear as if on a movie screen. The second is not as clear, but rather more like a double exposed image. I had to psychically separate the images to discern the stories behind them. Other memories came through my dreams and meditations. Learning Jungian dream analysis and studying symbols helped me understand the difference between metaphors and past life memories. I collected these snippets and searched for the part of my cosmic puzzle where they fit in. When I had enough pieces to pique my curiosity, I made an appointment with a past life regression therapist, Arthur Cataldo, hoping to glean more of Lily's story. As I wrote about my regression experience after the session, I realized that I saw so much more than I verbalized during the session. My process revealed itself to me. Spontaneous memories, dreams, visions, regression, journaling, reflect, repeat. Anne-Marie was the second past life I remembered, and even though her story was my dark night of the soul, I noticed that my fear of enclosed staircases was gone after I remembered her death. I finally understood the panic I felt as a teenager playing with a Ouija board when my hand lifted off the board and was drawn toward the enclosed staircase at my friend's home, and fear ran through me. However, even after I remembered Anne-Marie, harsh tones in a person's voice still tormented me. I later learned multiple lives held an imprint charged with this issue, but the charge dissipated as I remembered more past lives until it was a non-issue. This is a broad brushstrokes version of how I remembered my past lives, but I will go into more detail in the backstory section of the chapters ahead. I have heard similar reports from other people who are also remembering. I have witnessed variations on the theme as I have guided my clients on their journeys into past lives. As a medium facilitating my subject's past life regression, I feel like Peter Pan flying with Wendy into Neverland. Because of my interior design background, especially as an adjunct professor teaching the history of interior design, I often recognize a style within a period. Even though the focus in school was on Western designs, my love of Chinese and Eastern designs and interest in feng shui fueled my desire to study Eastern cultures and philosophy. My interior design studies served me well as a perfect training ground for my reincarnation research. My passion for life kicked into high gear when I studied everything I could about reincarnation and regression therapy, and when I trained with Brian Weiss, MD, Carol Bowman, MS, and HCH Institute. In fact, I had an experience in Bowman's training class that synergized my work. As a subject in a practice session, I met with my master teachers in a life between life session. They were compassionate and gentle, but nevertheless they called me out when they said, "Why do you insist on separating your work as a medium from your work as a past life regression therapist? You know you do them together." It was as if someone turned on the light switch for an overhead light when I had held a candle in a dark room. They showed me my readings and my past life sessions. I had merged the two modalities, but I had not owned it, not even to myself. It was an aha moment. I do not advertise, but I trust the universe guides people to me who can use my gifts to help them on their spiritual path. There's one more thing the masters wanted me to do, which I initially resisted because of my dyslexia, but I have finally accepted. Writing these stories, hoping you will suspend your disbelief long enough to travel through time with me.